Young and the Restless spoilers Wednesday, full December 31st, 2025. As the calendar edges toward the final hours of the year, Genoa City finds itself suspended in a deceptive calm. One that masks the slow-burning fractures forming beneath familiar relationships and unresolved traumas. For Mariah Copeland, the past refuses to stay buried, rising instead like a shadow that lengthens with every passing night. The memory of Ian Ward is not a distant scar but a living presence, one that intrudes upon her thoughts with unsettling persistence, disrupting her sense of safety and eroding the fragile stability she has fought to maintain. Ian is no longer physically present, yet his psychological imprint lingers, resurfacing in flashes of fear, moments of disorientation, and an ever-present unease that Mariah cannot fully articulate, even to those closest to her. This internal siege has quietly reshaped her emotional availability, leaving her guarded, withdrawn, and increasingly unable to offer reassurance to the one person who needs it most, her wife. Mariah's struggle is not loud or dramatic. It is private, insidious, and rooted in survival, a reminder that trauma does not require proximity to remain powerful, only memory and unresolved fear. That distance has not gone unnoticed by Tessa Porter, who finds herself caught between loyalty and longing, between the marriage she still believes in and the emotions she no longer knows how to suppress. Tessa continues to love Mariah deeply, not out of obligation but out of genuine connection, history, and shared resilience. Yet love alone has begun to feel insufficient when met with silence and emotional withdrawal. In this widening gap, Daniel Rowe Melody Jr. has quietly stepped into her orbit, not with intention or manipulation, but through proximity, understanding, and an ease that feels increasingly dangerous precisely because it is unforced. Daniel offers presence rather than pressure, empathy rather than expectation, and in doing so becomes a mirror reflecting parts of Tessa that have long been neglected or need to be seen, to be emotionally responded to feel chosen in the present rather than remembered from the past. What begins as companionship slowly acquires weight, and Tessa becomes aware, almost against her will, that her feelings for Daniel are no longer abstract or fleeting. They grow gradually, layered with guilt and confusion, complicated by the fact that they do not erase her love for Mariah but exist alongside it, creating a tension that leaves her emotionally divided. Tessa is not searching for escape, yet she cannot deny the contrast between Daniel's emotional accessibility and Mariah's increasing emotional absence, a contrast that sharpens with each unspoken moment. The realization unsettles her because it forces her to confront a truth she has been avoiding. Love does not remain static when left unattended, and loyalty alone cannot sustain a relationship indefinitely without reciprocity. As the year draws to a close, Tessa stands at an emotional crossroads, aware that acknowledging her feelings may irrevocably change the shape of her marriage, yet equally aware that continuing to deny them may cost her sense of self. While emotional reckonings unfold quietly, new possibilities announce themselves more directly elsewhere in Genoa City. Holden Novak makes a decisive move by formally inviting Claire Newman on a date, an invitation that carries more significance than its casual framing suggests. Holden's timing is deliberate, his suggestion of meeting on New Year's Eve laden with symbolism, offering not just an evening together but the promise of transition, of beginning something new at the precise moment the old year releases its hold. Claire's response is measured rather than impulsive, signaling openness without surrender, curiosity without naivete. And when she agrees, she does so with a condition that hints at unresolved questions still hovering between them. Claire has learned, through experience, that charm and sincerity are not substitutes for transparency, and while she is willing to explore the possibility of something more with Holden, she is unwilling to do so without clarity. That clarity, however, remains elusive, particularly where Audra Charles is concerned. Audra's name lingers like an unanswered riddle, and Claire's condition may well reopen questions Holden has thus far avoided confronting directly. Whether it involves withheld information, half-truths, or a deeper connection that Holden has yet to fully disclose, the presence of Audra complicates what might otherwise be a straightforward step forward. Claire's insistence on honesty is not rooted in suspicion alone, but in self-preservation. A recognition that the cost of emotional investment increases exponentially when foundational truths are obscured. As New Year's Eve approaches, the possibility of romance is tempered by the potential for revelation. And Holden must decide whether the future he seeks with Claire is worth the vulnerability required to fully earn her trust. Hovering above these unfolding stories is a moment of reflection offered not within the narrative itself, but through memory. As the show revisits its own history with a rebroadcast of a classic episode from 1998 on New Year's Day, the image of Jill Abbott disrupting Catherine Chancellor's party serves as a reminder that chaos, confrontation, and unexpected reversals have always been integral to the DNA of Genoa City. That moment from the past echoes into the present, reinforcing the idea that no celebration is immune to interruption and no we are free from emotional upheaval. It is a deliberate pause in the momentum of current storylines, allowing viewers to reflect on how far these characters and their legacy have traveled, even as the fundamental patterns of conflict and desire remain unchanged. When new episodes resume on Friday, January 2nd, the sense of suspension will break, and the consequences of these emotional undercurrents will begin to surface with greater clarity. Tessa's internal conflict can no longer remain abstract as her feelings for Daniel solidify into something that demands acknowledgement. While Mariah's unresolved trauma threatens to further isolate her unless confronted directly, Holden and Claire's tentative step toward intimacy may either mark the beginning of a genuine connection or expose fractures that have been present all along, depending on whether truth is offered or withheld. As the new year begins, Genoa City stands poised on the edge of transformation, where the past presses forward, the present demands honesty, and the future promises change not as a possibility, but as an inevitability, leaving each character to decide what they are willing to face and what they risk losing. As time moves relentlessly ahead, Genoa City always looks its most glamorous when the year is about to turn. But the truth is that New Year's Eve doesn't soften people who right sharpens them. Every countdown in this town is really a pressure test, a moment where old wounds throb louder, where secrets grow teeth, and where loyalty gets priced like a commodity. This year, the tension is everywhere, braided through marriages that no longer feel safe, through exes who still know exactly where to strike, through business empires that pretend to be built on contracts when they are really built on fear. Even the network's decision to air a classic 1998 episode on New Year's Day feels like a pointed reminder that Genoa City never changes as much as it pretends to. There will always be a party, always be a grand hostess who believes she's in control, and always be someone like Jill Abbott who walks in at precisely the wrong or perfectly right moment and detonates the room. That memory hangs over the present like an omen. Celebration is simply the stage where interruption becomes inevitable. And when new episodes return on Friday, January 2nd, the calm will be gone because too many people have been holding their breath for too long, waiting for the moment they finally exhale and destroy something they can't rebuild. For Mariah Copeland, the year's end doesn't feel like a doorway into anything new. It feels like a hallway that keeps narrowing. The image of Ian Ward is not a single memory she can lock away, but a recurring invasion that replays with cruel precision, showing up in the quiet moments when she expects relief. He is an obsession she never consented to, a ghost that doesn't merely haunt her past, but reshapes her present, making her distrust her own nervous system, making her question whether she is safe even when the doors are locked and the lights are on. That kind of fear doesn't announce itself as panic every time. It often disguises itself as distance, as numbness, as the inability to offer warmth when warmth is the very thing her marriage is starving for. Tessa Porter feels that starvation in real time. She still loves Mariah with the kind of devotion that was forged in crises and carried through storms. But love is beginning to feel like a language spoken by one person in a room where the other has gone silent. Mariah's pain has made her protective to the point of being unreachable, and the tragedy is that she believes she is shielding Tessa when she is actually leaving her alone with unanswered questions. In that loneliness, Daniel Romolodi has become a steady presence, not in a calculated way, but in a way that is almost more dangerous because it feels natural. Daniel knows what it is to carry regret, to rebuild after mistakes, to look at a life and wonder when it started slipping out of his hands. And his understanding gives Tessa something she hasn't been able to find at home lately: emotional air. Their closeness doesn't erase her vows, it complicates them. Tessa is the kind of person who believes loyalty should be enough, who wants to do the right thing even when it hurts. Yet she can feel the truth rising in her like a tide. Her feelings for Daniel are no longer small. They are growing, quietly but relentlessly, and the more she tries to smother them, the more she notices how much she has been living on scraps of hope from Mariah. How often she has been waiting for a sign that the marriage is still a shared fight. The cruelest part is that she doesn't stop loving Mariah just because she is starting to feel something real for Daniel. Instead, she's forced into a divided heart. And divided hearts in Genoa City never stay quiet for long. Meanwhile, Holden Novak takes a different kind of risk, the kind that looks simple on the surface and complicated underneath. He officially asks Claire Newman out, and he even suggests New Year's Eve, as if starting something at midnight could cleanse whatever came before. Claire's answer is not a swoon or a refusal, but a conditional yes, the kind that tells Holden she is willing to step forward, but only if he stops treating honesty like an optional accessory. Claire has learned that charming men with hidden chapters are rarely hiding something harmless, and Audra Charles remains the unspoken name that keeps hovering around Holden's edges. The detail that doesn't fit no matter how carefully he tries to rearrange the story. Claire's condition feels like a test, but it is really a boundary. She is telling him that if he wants access to her life, he must stop protecting whatever truth he thinks he can manage alone. In another year, that might have been a flirtation. In this year, with trust collapsing everywhere, it is a warning. Trust is also being bought and sold at the highest level, because Victor Newman has decided to reward Michael Baldwin for loyalty. And nothing Victor does is ever just generosity. Michael has spent years proving he will stand in Victor's corner even when the corner is dark, even when the cost is his own conscience, even when his name gets dragged through mud that will never wash clean. Victor's reward could look like appreciation, but Genoa City understands what it really means: a promotion of power, a deepening of obligation. A reminder that in Victor's world, loyalty is not a virtue, it is a contract. Michael will accept because refusing Victor is rarely a real option, yet the acceptance will tighten a quiet knot inside him. Because he knows that every gift from Victor comes with a future demand attached. While Victor solidifies his inner circle, Nikki Newman chooses a different kind of leverage. It confides a secret to Jack Abbott, and the word secret in Genoa City is never small. Nikki's confession doesn't just risk her marriage. It risks the fragile détente between Newman and Abbott that has been rebuilt too many times to pretend it's unbreakable. Jack is the kind of man who carries other people's truths like weight on his shoulders, and Nikki is the kind of woman who doesn't confess unless something inside her has reached a breaking point. The timing matters. New Year's Eve is the night people want to pretend they can start over. But Nikki's secret suggests she knows that starting over is impossible without first detonating what's been hidden. And while these older power players trade confessions and rewards like chess moves, Adam Newman and Sally Spectra sit with something more intimate yet no less explosive: their past. They do not need a scandal to feel the pull of what they were. The history is already written into their reactions, their regrets, the way their eyes search each other for evidence that the pain meant something. Talking about the past is never neutral for them. It becomes a reckoning because their story holds loss, betrayal, and the kind of longing that doesn't vanish just because life moved on. Adam has built a new relationship. Sally has tried to plant herself in a different future, yet memory doesn't care about current circumstances. Memory resurfaces at the worst times, and in Genoa City, the worst times are always scheduled right before a celebration because the town loves irony as much as it loves champagne. Across town, Lily Winters is walking into her own reckoning with the kind of controlled fury that only comes from being blindsided by someone you once trusted with your entire life. She recently saw Kane kiss Phyllis Summers, and that image doesn't just sting, it rewrites the emotional geography of Lily's world. It forces her to confront the question she never wanted to ask. Was Kane's attention ever truly stable? Or was it always something that could be redirected the moment a familiar temptation appeared? Lily's decision to visit Kane on his train on New Year's Eve carries multiple meanings. On the surface, it could be a confrontation, a demand for accountability, a chance to look him in the eyes and make him explain why he would risk reopening wounds that were barely scarred over. But deeper than that, it is Lily refusing to be a passive character in a story that has been happening to her. Kane, for his part, is delighted to see her, and that delight is its own kind of cruelty as it suggests he believes Lily is still his emotional home, the place he can return to whenever he wants to feel forgiven. Kane frames the night as if he is meant to be alone and Lily is the only person who can change that, as if his loneliness is a romantic tragedy instead of a consequence. He suggests they ring in 2026 together, and that suggestion lands like a blade because it is both manipulative and sincere in the worst possible way. Lily has to decide whether this is a final conversation, a boundary set in stone, or the beginning of yet another cycle where Kane's charm and her history with him blur the lines. Phyllis's presence in the background makes everything dirtier, because Lily isn't only reacting to a kiss, he's reacting to the implication that Kane's choices are still impulsive, still selfish, still capable of making Lily feel like the responsible one who must either forgive or become the villain for refusing. Her heartbreak is not fragile, it is furious. Yet fury doesn't protect her from the lingering truth that some bonds don't disappear just because they should. New Year's Eve on a train becomes symbolic. Motion without clarity, forward movement without certainty, a destination unknown while the past keeps rattling the windows. And then there is the other kind of reckoning, raw, public, edged with danger playing out between Nick Newman and Matt. If the rest of Genoa City is trying to bury conflict under glitter, this situation is stripped of any illusion of elegance. Matt stages a performance by leaning on the railing and pretending he might jump. And it is not just a threat of self-harm. It is a weaponized narrative, an attempt to frame Nick as the kind of man who would push someone over the edge. It is blackmail disguised as vulnerability, a trap designed to force Nick into either panic or violence, either of which can be used against him. Nick, however, refuses to play the role Matt is assigning him. He calls the bluff, exposes the manipulation, and in doing so makes the confrontation even more volatile, because men like Matt don't react well to being seen clearly. Nick's response carries a cold logic sharpened by the memory of how Matt slipped away last time, how consequences failed to stick, how the system can be bent if the story is loud enough. Nick's suggestion that Matt could do it again if he wants to push the performance further lands like a dare, but it is also a psychological maneuver. Nick is testing whether Matt is truly unstable or simply pretending to be. And Matt eventually admits the truth. He wasn't really planning to end his life. The confession doesn't come anything. It clarifies the kind of danger they're dealing with. This is not a man on the brink. This is a man willing to exploit the brink as a bargaining chip. When Matt agrees to take the $1 million, he immediately adds his own condition. The money must be wired into an overseas account. That detail matters because it's not just greed, it's strategy. An offshore account means disappearing, means jurisdictional fog, means leverage even after the deal is supposedly done. It means Matt has no intention of being pinned down by promises or paperwork. Nick may believe he is buying safety, buying control, buying an end to the threat. But in Genoa City, money rarely buys endings. It buys delays. It buys temporary silences. It buys the illusion that the monster has been fed enough to go away, when monsters like Matt only learn that feeding works. By the time midnight approaches, all of these storylines are pulling toward the same conclusion. The new year is not arriving as a clean slate, but as a spotlight. Mariah's trauma is pushing her into isolation at the exact moment Tessa's heart is reaching outward. And Daniel's growing closeness to her is no longer innocent if it becomes the place she runs for comfort. Holden and Claire's almost date is balancing on a single condition that could either deepen their connection or expose a lie big enough to shatter it. Especially if Audra's shadow turns out to be more than just a name. Victor's reward to Michael tightens the Newman grip on loyalty, but it also plants the seed of an obligation that could later drag Michael into a moral compromise he can't live with. Nikki's secret to Jack isn't merely a confession, it's a match near dry gasoline. Because whatever she reveals has the power to fracture alliances and reorder loyalties across families that have spent decades wounding each other. Adam and Sally's conversation about their past threatens to reopen a door neither of them is sure they should walk through, because nostalgia in Genoa City is never safe, it's a portal. Lily's visit to Kane on that train is a collision between dignity and desire, between what she knows she should do and what her history tempts her to do. And the very fact that Kane is happy to see her suggests he still believes he can rewrite the damage with a single night of shared emotion. And Nick's standoff with Matt ends with a wire transfer plan that sounds like resolution but feels like the beginning of something worse, because when someone insists on an offshore account, they are not planning to close the chapter, they are planning to vanish while keeping the power to return.